So, Joe, not that many filmmakers have attempted to adapt Lovecraft at this scale. Why do you think that is?
Well, aside from Stuart Gordon, honestly, I think part of the reason why, and I think this is also something that Clive Barker runs into a lot when he's not doing his own films, is that when there is something that is always lost in translation when you're going from prose to the silver screen or to a tiny little screen or whatever. And where I think Stephen King, on the flip side, and Johnathan knows this because he's adapted the King before, where King can be very easy to adapt because there is there's an ease to his prose that allows you to kind of not copy and paste, but get the essence very simply from Stephen's page to like Jonathan's page, so to speak. Lovecraft is very deep, like if I can't really think of a better word than it's not very easily adaptable, and Clive Barker for the longest time has been that way too. So that's where you have geniuses like Dennis Paoli come in, and somehow Dennis is kind of like the Lovecraft whisperer, where he somehow is able to harness the essence of what a Lovecraftian plot and what the characters are. Because if you read the story, I don't think, and I'm sure there's going to be some naysayers out there. It's like, this is not like a very true adaptation of Lovecraft. There's no fucking way you can actually do that, without it being incredibly uncinematic. But we're telling a story using devices, both structurally, thematically, stylistically, visually, that are hopefully going to be something that, the world commercially can enjoy, that still has the stamp of approval of what Lovecraft would want, So there are things in the movie, whether it's the knock 3 times and knock 2 times, or even just Miskatonic and some of the characters, both in his story, but also in Stuart's adaptation, that we've infused. But like Barbara has said before, the thing that makes, I think, Lovecraft still viable to this day is that there is a fear of the unknown. And Lovecraft, whether he's working in Innsmouth or he's working with Cthulhu or any of these like cosmic horror kind of elements, there is something so terrifying about what we don't see. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that I've really always been excited about when it came to like working on this, is that we ultimately, without giving too much away, we have an antagonist we never see. Mm-hmm. That to me is something. Now it's embodied by these amazing actors that you see before you, but we never really have a moment that is like, aha, that's exactly who it is, and that to me is terrifying. And that is something that I think Lovecraft is so well trained at being able to present to the audience. It's just finding the right people that can translate it, go like, okay, blah, 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 and then off to us, and be able to do that like in effect. Way.
I feel like Dennis Paoli has to, like his writing imposes a story upon the feeling and tone of Lovecraft better than anybody. Mm-hmm. Figuring out what's the story to tell of the fear inside.
Heather, the loss of control and personal autonomy is a really big part of this film. Why is that such an inherently scary theme?
Well, I guess the idea of someone taking over your body to the point where you don't know what they've done when they were in your body and how you've been represented in maybe a way that you would never represent yourself. It's the loss of control, which I think is scary just in general. Just the idea of my character, Elizabeth Derby, like to live your whole life in a certain way and try to present yourself in a certain way. And then to just think, oh my God, this like evil entity has possessed my body. And now is going home to be with my husband. It's like, it's pretty terrifying. Not only that I think, my character thinks that he'll be killed, but just, it's totally frightening to sort of feel like someone has possessed your body, I guess.
Barbara, I really love to see that friendship outpowered romance in this film. Was that something that was always a part of this project as it was being developed? Was that conscious?
Oh, I think the friendship was there. It's there in the original story of, the two guys. And then Joe wanted to change the gender. And so I think that Joe wanted to keep the friendship and the bond between our characters as strong as possible. And, you know, Heather and I don't have that many scenes together, so we have to make them count. And, you know, there's the hand gesture that we do, and we say something to one another that we've said all the time. And these are longtime colleagues. And we just had to make every scene that we had together count so that you actually felt like there was a bond between them.
Mm-hmm. So Judah, the construct of gender in this movie is really fluid. And I think you did an excellent job of straddling multiple genders without leaning into stereotype. How did you approach that?
From the inside out, you know, I think regardless of gender or how you identify, we're all human beings, you know?
Yeah.
And I think approaching it just from where that specific human being is in their life, regardless of any of those other aspects, was the most truthful way to come at it.
Definitely. Okay, Johnathan, you have done Frank and Penelope recently. You've done Suitable Flesh. These are some very dark and heightened genre projects. What is your personal relationship with horror?
Well, I started making horror films. The Forsaken was the first one I ever did, and then one of my guys I used to hang out with in high school, he has a company called Cemetery Dance. He's the leading publisher of horror, independent horror in the world, and so we started working together on film. And I wrote for the Masters of Horror. I wrote for Fear Itself. I wrote for Stephen King. So it's kind of been like, it's not necessarily my go-to, but it was my partner's go-to. And so I've been part of this world for quite a long time, and I'm very picky when it comes to my horror. And when Joe came to me, I know he's an aficionado and he really loves it. I was really excited. And then when they were saying they're going to switch all the roles and with Lovecraft, I was like, this is fantastic. This is not just, it's not trendy. I mean, we used to do this in acting school 30 years ago. We would swap roles, you know. And Glenn Ross, the girls would always play those characters because there was nothing ever written for girls during that time. So it was a joy to take on something that was different in the horror world that I had ever played before.
I'd like to just jump in really quick and wax Jonathan's car a second, because you know, I had known Johnathan. We met at I don't know if you remember this, Johnathan, but we met at Doug Loves Movies years ago, where you were playing the Bub character in Day of the Dead, the remake. And I was already like, and immediately within 5 minutes, I was like, this guy knows his shit. You know, like he was definitely like one of us. Like we know, like horror fans always have that secret handshake when you know that, like, okay, we can spar, we can pass ideas back and forth, we can talk about our favorite movies. And sometimes that is so important, especially when you're trying to create a vision. So when I worked with Johnathan on Creepshow, that was another thing, that we were blending genres between Westerns and apocalyptic stuff and, you know, doomsday horror, and being able to say to Johnathan, like, no, let's go 28 Days Later with a mix of the Searchers. And he'd go, got it, you know. So to be able to take this one step further, because in that movie, in that show, you're taking the archetype of a rugged Western male, and you say that, okay, John, look up in the dictionary, oh, Johnathan Schaech, that makes sense. Here, it was actually my partner who was like, what about Schaech? Like, she was on the couch and she's like, go with Schaech. He could be a good doting wife. And that's where I went, holy crap, you're right. Like, you could take the paradigm of what you expect from every single one of these actors that you're looking at right now. Like, that was one of the fun things about this project, was being able to subvert everything that they've brought to the table before, because we're not stupid. Audiences are not stupid. Like, you can go like, oh, I loved her in this movie, I loved him in that baggage you bring in. So why not take that and take advantage of that and make it so that when they're watching this, they're going, I've never seen that before. And to be able to have Judah playing, you know, instead of a femme fatale, he's more of a homme fatale, you know, like if you're going to use film noir histrionic.
Perfume is in the making for that, right? Like
Homme fatale, and it'll be Judah's face. All right, Judah, do it. Ready and go. There it is.
I
See it
don't
on
know.
billboards. But that's the point, is that, and that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I loved about this project was being able to use and exploit Johnathan Schaech, for example, and go, okay, we've seen him before. We've seen him play a manly man and an alpha man, an alpha male. And what's the first thing you see when you see him in this movie? He's making a beautiful Bronzino and trying to dote over his wife. That was the whole point.
Heather, you mentioned in another interview that this was one of the most exciting scripts to hit your desk in a little while. What was that first impression of reading the script like?
Well, I love psychology. I love therapy. I loved the idea of playing a therapist. And I just, we were talking about how in the erotic thriller, it's so rarely ever from the female character's point of view. When I think of all the most famous ones, I can't think of any that are with the woman as the protagonist. So I think it's interesting just to explore a woman's erotic life. And I guess in this movie, you could say it's a cautionary tale, but it's cool to get to play such a fleshed out character, and also, of course, to body swap. I mean, to body swap and play a demon is so fun and just so something I've never done. And to get to play Barbara's character, who's like really coming from her, her intellect, and it's very juicy as an actress to get given the opportunity to do so many fun things in one movie.
Yeah. Barbara, you've been championing this project for a while, even as it stalled in development hell. How does it feel now that you've reached the finish line at Tribeca, no less?
It's just, I'm so grateful. I'm so, I want to cry now that you say that. It actually makes me cry. I mean, every movie is hard to get off the ground, right? And the only way we could have done it is with all of these players here and with our amazing director. And, it's just an amazing feat to even read a script that you love, that you want to make, and to actually get it made and to arrive somewhere that is the pinnacle. I mean, we're here at the horizon at Tribeca, and it's very satisfying. I love everybody who worked on this movie. I love the script so much, and I'm just so proud of all of us.
Well, congrats to all of you. The movie's great. I'm so excited to see how fans react.
Thanks, Josh.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So much.
Thanks, everybody.
Josh.